This is a word for a specific kind of person. Not everyone who has been through difficulty, not everyone who has experienced loss or disappointment or the ordinary hardships of life. This is for the specific person who was counted out by people who were close enough to know better, who was written off not by strangers, not by casual acquaintances, but by people who had been given access and chose to use that access against you rather than for you. If that is your story, if you have been betrayed by insiders, this message is yours. The people who counted you out are not sleeping well right now. Not because they feel guilty, though some of them do, but because what they are watching God do in your life after what they did to you does not compute. It does not fit the story they told themselves about who you were and what you deserved and what would happen to you without them. And watching something they cannot explain, something that flatly contradicts the narrative they built, is deeply unsettling to people who need their narratives to be correct. Every highlight of your life that finds its way to them through mutual connections, through social media, through the inevitable channels that information travels, lands like a verdict they didn't expect. The verdict is in, and it is not the one they anticipated. I want to be precise about the kind of betrayal I'm addressing here, because there are many kinds and they do not all feel the same. There is the betrayal of someone who acts against you in a moment of weakness or fear, who prioritizes their own safety over their loyalty to you in a specific situation. This kind of betrayal is painful, but it often comes from someone who did not have the character the relationship required, rather than from someone with specific malice toward you. And then there is the other kind. The kind where someone who knew your vulnerabilities, your hopes, your private fears, your unspoken dreams, someone you trusted with the real version of yourself, used that knowledge, used it to diminish you, to harm you, to construct a narrative about you that was designed to land with credibility because it came from someone who was supposed to know you. The second kind of betrayal is in a different category. It is not simply a relational failure, it is a spiritual act, and God treats it differently than he treats ordinary conflict. When David writes in Psalm 55 about the specific anguish of being betrayed by a close companion, "It is not an enemy who taunts me, then I could bear it. It is not an adversary who deals insolently with me, then I could hide from him. But it is you, a man my equal, my companion, my familiar friend." He is describing exactly this experience. The wound from this kind of betrayal is not primarily about the damage done, though that is real. It is about the fundamental disorientation of discovering that someone you believed was safe was not. Here is what I want you to understand about why God responds to this particular category of injustice with such precision. Throughout Scripture, the betrayal of covenant relationship, the weaponizing of trust and intimacy against the person who offered it, is something God takes seriously in a way that general conflict does not invoke. This is the theme of Judas, the theme of Absalom, the theme of the false prophets who spoke peace when there was no peace. And in each case, the response of heaven was not merely to restore the person who was betrayed, it was to ensure that the specific nature of the betrayal was ultimately made plain, that the intimate knowledge used against the person became the very thing that exposed the betrayer's own character, that the closeness they exploited became the proximity that revealed their actions most clearly. What was done to you in private will be answered in public. Not because God is punishing the people who betrayed you, though there are natural consequences to this kind of action, but because the nature of covenant violation requires a corresponding revelation. The darkness of what was done needs the light of what is true, and that light is coming. Can I tell you about the specific quality of the night seasons that follow this kind of betrayal? Because this is the part that is hardest to articulate to people who haven't been through it. It is not the anger that is the hardest part, though the anger is real and valid.
It is not the grief, though the grief is profound. It is the confusion that comes from having your own perception undermined by someone you trusted to help you see clearly. When someone who knew you well chooses to portray you as something you are not, and does it convincingly enough that other people believe it, you start to wonder what is actually true about yourself. You had been using that relationship partly as a reference point. Their knowledge of you was data about who you were, and when they weaponized that data, they didn't simply harm your reputation with others, they contaminated your own self-understanding. Some of you have spent months in the aftermath of a betrayal like this, trying to reconstruct your own sense of who you are, independent of the distorted portrait they painted. Trying to remember what you actually said versus what they reported you saying. Trying to hold on to the clarity of your own motives in the face of someone else's very confident mischaracterization of them. That work, the work of reclaiming your own self-knowledge after someone has tampered with it, is some of the hardest spiritual and psychological work a person can do. And if you are still in the middle of that work, I want you to know you are going to find solid ground. Your perception of yourself is recoverable. The truth about who you are is not under their control.
This is what God is doing now. He is doing two things simultaneously, and understanding both of them will help you navigate this season. First, He is building. On the other side of the betrayal, in the cleared space of the relationships that fell away, in the lessons of the season, in the discernment that was forged in the fire of being misrepresented, He has been constructing something. The character development that happened in the aftermath of what you survived, the relationships that arrived after the false ones cleared out, the clarity about who you are and what you carry that emerged from the process of having to fight for your own self-knowledge. The person you are now, shaped by the experience, not broken by it, is the person God was building toward. The betrayal, as destructive as it was also formative. It produced in you something that could not have been produced any other way. Second, He is revealing. The truth about what was done has a timeline, and that timeline is now moving. The people who participated in or benefited from your betrayal are encountering God's justice in their own lives in ways that are specific and proportional. This is not something you need to monitor. It is not something you need to accelerate. You may not see all of it, but it is happening. And the people who counted you out, they are watching what God has been building in you. They are watching it through every channel available to them. And it does not fit any version of the story they told about you. That is not your problem to manage. That is God's justice making itself plain. If God turned your betrayal into a building season, if the worst thing that happened to you became the foundation for the best thing God was building, I need you to type redirect in the comments. Even if you are still in the middle of it, even if the building is not visible yet from the outside, even if the only evidence you have right now is the internal shift, the clarity, the discernment, the peace that has arrived since the betrayal, type redirect. Let's build a wall of testimony in this comment section for everyone who is still in the early days of the aftermath and needs to know what is possible on the other side. Subscribe. I'm coming back with a full teaching on how to protect your inner circle in the future, specifically the discernment practices that help you recognize safe versus unsafe intimacy before the betrayal rather than after. That is a conversation this community needs to have. I will see you there.